All right, the property prequel, be in the know before you buy, Q&A Asks Matt series. Try to punch maybe one out a month. I really enjoy these, and a bit of a different perspective, but also a little bit on the business side, the property side as well, some personal stuff, and everything in between. Always a bit of fun. Joined by the one and only Jamila.
Thank you. Thanks for having me every month.
Love it. And on cue, black on black as well.
Black on black.
Not planned. Not planned.
Not planned.
Just on the same wavelength. I love it. So we always be on the lookout. We always put a bit of a question box out there on the Instagram. Just throw it out there because it's always good to get people's feedback on thoughts, and I always like it because it just different perspectives as well. Not always just on the property front. I always find people who are successful in property have similar traits in different areas of life too. Like they're very kind of driven people. They're looking after their health. They're kind of always thinking ahead as well. So I always find the holistic approach around property is just as important as just knowledge on property itself. So get amongst it. And if you do have questions, keep on a lookout for that one. But we've chosen six of the best we thought from the question box. What are we starting with?
Okay, let's get straight into it. So number one, first question that we've got is, any advice on how to balance high performance without burning out? Which I feel like is a great, you know the answers to this.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. Hand is up. I've been close. I reflecting, I probably was burnt out now that I think about it. And I think it's normal as well. I think it's okay to go through those phases of burnout. I think anyone who's getting into business especially and going through a startup will succumb to it at some point. I think it's just inevitable. But what I've learned is there are tools to not only minimize it, but also be aware when you're on the verge of burnout, I feel. It's funny you asked that, Jamila. I come back from Gwingana health retreat.
Good old Gwingana.
The old Gwingana.
Didn't stop hearing about it for about 2 months.
Goodness. I tell you what, the biggest thing I took away from there was when you let the mind rest, how much it recharges you. Just like you plug a charger into a phone, our minds need that too. And one thing that really stuck out with me was noise. Even though you are resting, noise and distraction is still limiting the battery. So sometimes my biggest tip around burnout now has been firstly awareness. And the big one for me is a little bit more snappier, a little bit shorter, a little bit less patient. I think understanding your cues and triggers is probably number one, just self-awareness. Number two then is, applying tools before you get into the burnout phase, because the burnout phase isn't a fun phase. You're non-motivated. Things are draining. Everyone's pissing you off. I feel it's not a great place to be. So knowing that you're on the verge of it is the place I feel to apply the tools. And one big tool that I've been doing is like breath work. We've done a lot around stress management, breath work, learning around the vagus nerve and how that relates to the sympathetic and parasympathetic zones in our body. And I think just the awareness around that and then applying, I know it sounds super simple, but it's super effective, the breath and understanding when you're feeling those, the burnout heightened. To be able to stop there and go through your tools. So I highly recommend, if no one's ever done sort of breath work activities, definitely look into that. Secondly, have a look at doing like an retreat or give yourself a holiday even. Like, I know so many people that don't take enough holidays. But my biggest mindset shift of it all around the holidays now is really putting away devices and trying best to just be in the moment of where you are in the holiday.
Because you left your phone at home when you went to Gwingana. You didn't have your car, you didn't have your phone. And I'll never forget the person that you didn't leave in a bad way, but energetically wise. And then the person that you were when you came back was honestly completely different. Not that you needed to change, but just you're having that, I think, was it 4 days that you were there for?
5, yeah.
5, like completely different mindset, even though you have a great mindset. So it just takes you to that next level.
Insane. And that's what I mean. Sometimes we need the forced perspective shift to understand what sometimes the answer is. And as I said, my biggest tip around that burnout piece is, again, awareness of when it's coming. And then secondly is some tools around it. For me, it's breath work. For you, it could be meditation or whatever, or just some sort of routine. And then the third thing is, again, huge tip is don't underestimate how dangerous our devices are to our brain fuzz.
Honestly.
Like, I think sometimes it's okay to put them away.
People forget that it has such a big impact because it's such a normal part of life now.
Massive.
Like your phone is constantly in your hand, you're looking on Instagram, you're calling people, you're working off your phone, you're sending emails off your phone.
Everything.
And then the moment you're like, oh, I've got some time to rest, and then you feel odd not having your phone in your hand. Like people
lean into that feeling.
Yeah.
Oh, game changing. So that's my tips around the burnout piece.
That's some really good tips.
It's really important.
Yeah.
Very important.
I feel like as well, like awareness, like a lot of people, it's great to tap in and be like, oh, I'm noticing that I'm feeling sick, or I'm getting a bit, I don't know if it's like anxiety can start to be something that people have when they go through burnout. Just really reflecting on, oh, how am I showing up and how I'm feeling. I think awareness is such a huge one. So 100%. Such good tips.
100%. All starts with awareness.
Sure does. Sure does.
You can burn out without even knowing you're burning out. So I think that's the big one.
Yeah. And be so blinded to it, and then get all these illnesses. And so
100%.
Good tips. Let's go on. Is there anything else that you want to add to that?
No, just, it's super important. It's very important. I think any high performance, sport, business, whatever you're going through, your energy is number one, and your health is always comes first. Yep.
Well said.
100%.
So with this question, it's more on the property side. So your property journey and strategy to get to where you are today. And strategies moving forward.
The strategy to date has been what I like to call just a buy and hold strategy, I guess is the best way to put it. So I got my first property at the age of 22, I think it was, 23. And ever since then, I've still to this day, I've never sold a property. So for me, the journey's always been around what I like to call accumulation. And there's 2 phases I've identified and learnt of some of the best investors I've been around since my 20s is there's an accumulation phase and then there's a consolidation phase. I think you have to go through one to get to the other. And this is just what I've noticed the best do. And this is, again, my personal journey, not financial advice and not the be all end all way to do it. There's so many different ways to do it, but I've just found it really suited not only where I was in life in terms of my age, but also risk appetite.
Yes. Okay.
A lot of people forget, what is your risk tolerance? I'd consider myself kind of in the medium zone where I'm happy to take a punt, a calculated risk, I like to call it. But I'm not the type of person who'll go speculative. So you won't see me kind of taking a huge pun on something that could pay off. I'm just more you set and forget. So that's number one, knowing what your risk appetite is, because the buy and hold strategy is more for people who are probably less risk adverse and just happy to kind of be patient on the journey. It's definitely not a get rich quick, but it's a get very wealthy over a long period of time. And now that I've been in it over a decade, it snowballs. It just continues to snowball. So where the journey's sort of taken off early days, and I still love this strategy advice to other people, is one of my mentors always said, ordinary houses for ordinary people. He said, Matt, the demographic around Australia, relatively speaking, that zone of kind of the rental pool of just ordinary houses, good locations, nothing on the high end, nothing either on the really low end, because you want a subjective tenant. You know, I'm not saying they're worse people or anything, but I always aim for kind of the middle to lower end of the market, where it was affordable, ordinary houses, high tenant pool as well. So a lot of people in some of the areas I was early on investing in were more in the tenant pool versus ownership as well. but they were in areas that were going up. And the biggest tip of all is that they were surrounded by quality infrastructure in the area. So I used to drive into all the areas I used to invest in. I'd go to the shops, the local shops.
Yes, I remember you telling me
Yeah,
this.
I'd literally just buzz around and see what the type of
happening.
people are. I'd check, is there healthcare? Was always number one. So hospitals, just how many doctors were around, chemists. I used to always look at schools. So not just private, but also just your standard public schools, daycares. Was there a secondary school as well nearby? Did the transport systems provide access to those amenities? So I used to check out, all right, where does the 416 bus go to? If I bought this property here, it's close to the 416 bus stop. What are the routes that bus does? Could you get to all of these amenities if you didn't have a car?
So you did your research.
Always did the research.
Put in the work.
And then the last one was always around like shops and grocery and just standard things that everyone knows about, but I think you have to immerse yourself into the suburbs. So I did a lot of investing in sort of your outer rings of Brisbane, parts of the Gold Coast before it gentrified, things like that. They were all sort of cash flow neutral, and then after time they became cash flow positive, and then they just accumulated there. I'd extract the money and equity. I'd do like a micro renovation, I call it. So people always think structural versus cosmetic. I'd always go just cosmetic, paint, carpet, blinds, ceiling fans. Yeah, literally change a few door handles. And early days, I wouldn't do it now, but early days I used to do it myself. And me and a mate, I remember during COVID, we got in there and I didn't have a handyman bone in my body.
Don't. You still.
I put up
don't.
the blinds and did the fans.
Good
and
on you.
all that sort of stuff. So, so over time, where it's led me is like, being able to borrow the bank, keep going again. So, to answer whoever's asked this question is, at the moment, my journey's got me to around 16 rental properties. 9 of them are sort of single homes on titles. The rest is all like unit blocks on the titles. And then for me, the next phase now, the next decade's going to look like what I said earlier, consolidation. So a lot of those properties have grown immensely, and same with the cash flow. Now I can continue to borrow, but now I want to look at deals that are going to either pay off debt for those properties. So that's what I mean about consolidating, because you can keep accumulating for the rest of your life, but I don't know. I always believed in quality over quantity when it comes to property.
I agree.
Because at the end of the day, it's all good carrying lots of debt, but at the end of the day, I don't know. Again, risk appetite. I don't need 50, 60 houses. I just need what I put in like passive income goals and being able to do that. But that's kind of been the journey. And to answer the question wholeheartedly, it's buy and hold has been the strategy. Now the next decade for me is being able to go to the bank. So make sure your borrowing capacity is strong. And then working on buying, I call it debt reduction deals. Debt reduction deals are things like potentially development, flips, a little bit higher risk, but I'm confident because I've got the basis of the portfolio there, as emergency. So, and that's really the strategy. And then I always look at things in decades. That's me for the next decade, I think, and just focus in on that. So that would be my biggest advice, is see where you are in the strategy in terms of, are you in accumulation or are you in consolidation? And keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Always. And the biggest thing is, property is not a get rich quick overnight.
I was going to say I love that.
It's a get rich slow. And it can create generational wealth if you're smart about it and you're patient and you're willing to stay on the path and stay committed and focused. Because too many people, I feel now, want the quick buck tomorrow. And again, you see it all the time, like they're just impatient. And one of my favorite sayings is, true wealth is the transfer from the impatient to the patient.
Love it. Always coming through with the good ones.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
That's really powerful. That's some really good value there. I feel like I even took a lot from that. So, all right. Anything else
No.
on that? Perfect.
Stay patient.
So stay patient.
Stay patient.
It's a good reminder in any situation
Everything.
as
Yeah.
well. Property, life.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Business.
Oh,
Huge. Huge one.
100%.
So with this next question, we've got, would you be open to mentoring and coaching new BAs located interstate?
Coaching buyers agents. Yeah. I mean, I'm super passionate around wanting to upskill the buyers agency industry right now. I think it's a cool job all of a sudden. Everyone wants to become a buyer's
everyone
agent.
wants to be a buyer's agent.
Like,
It is a cool job though.
it's
Like,
cool. Yeah. And
I'd rather be on
yeah.
side.
Yeah. And the amount of DMs and stuff I get these days, like of even emails, like which I'm super appreciative of, like people wanting to understand, like wanting to get into the industry or wanting an opportunity to work with us or learn and things like that. Super grateful. Two parts. First part is in terms of right now where I am in the journey. You know me, I love I live by the word focus.
Yes.
Follow one course until successful. And for me right now in the journey, I'm really focused on building a quality team with my business that I already have. So my attention and focus needs to go towards the people within that business first and foremost. Because if I spread myself too wide, again, I don't want to limit the capacity on what we can do. I'm very confident on what we're building on the Gold Coast and the people we're building and the people we're bringing in are going to make some really strong impact. So just want to get the infrastructure right there and the people
and training and
educating.
them for now.
I'd rather focus on them first and then take that juice and bottle it all up and then be able to spread it on wider impact because I truly, truly believe that I've got a lot to offer in terms of the buyer's agency space. I've been buying property since my early 20s and I built this business up very quickly. And one thing, my biggest advice to any buyer's agents or anyone wanting to get in the industry right now is just because you feel you're going to make a good buyer's agent doesn't mean you're going to have a successful buyer's agency business. If you choose to open up your own buyer's agency, you're now competing in the sport of business. It's the baker who tries to open the bakery shop and realizes it's a whole different skill set. So straight away, I educate all buyer's agents. You either plug and play into an existing business, or you go and build your own from the ground up, but you're also aware that, hey, I might like buying houses and helping people and all that. But the sport of business,
it's a whole nother game.
Baby, that's a different game. It's a different
It really
game.
is.
Completely different sport.
Yeah.
So you got to play both sports.
Sorry, but you're kind of saying you can be really good at something and want to create a business from it, but then it's having the business mind and skills and systems to run what you're good at.
100%.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's around identifying what you enjoy and what you want to do as well. So the amount of buyer's agents I have spoken to, and I love it, they all struggle with this. There comes to a point they love being a buyer's agent. They're buying lots of homes. They're impacting people. They bring on a team and then they hit the pain ceiling. And that pain ceiling is essentially the only way I can scale is trading more time for more money, which is impossible. So they realize we have to build a business and people around the business and structure and systems and processes to be able to help people at scale while still having energy and not working 1,000 hours a week. So the bottleneck becomes you. So my biggest tip is understanding, okay, if you want to be a buyer's agent and you want to open your own business, be prepared to learn the sport of business, which is amazing. But if you're someone who really loves just being a buyer's agent, maybe look at plugging yourself or finding a mentor. Again, that's what I'm super passionate about. Plugging into that and then just doing your thing and being resourceful around that. So I just want to create more awareness because I think not enough buyer's agents understand the two different hats that they're going to wear or that, that's out there. So, but if anyone does want to, I guess, dive into that, I guess the good news is I am slowly, just because, again, the amount of people always reaching out and whatnot. What I
asking that
decided to
question.
do was create like a bit of like an online sort of forum where, hey, there's only so many catch-ups I can do with people, unfortunately. And I believe my time is precious, and I value that as well. And I want to also create impact with a lot of people. So what I've decided to do, me and my assistant have created like a bit of a wait list where people, if they email, just DM me the word wait list if you're watching this online, or just flick me an email, info@thesramagroup.com, and just mention the Q&A wait list. And yeah, we'll have a bit of a Q&A kind of forum where at scale everyone can ask their questions on that, and I'll just bring the heat, and it'll be a bit of fun. And that's purely free of charge. It's just because I want to upskill the industry. So make sure you get amongst that if you are a buyer's agent and you're looking to grow your knowledge in this area and learning the difference between buyer's agent and business.
There you go. Always bringing the heat. Always.
Yeah. I'm
Love
excited
it.
on that one.
Amazing that you're starting that off for free, just to add value. And
Yeah, man.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Why not? Why not?
All right.
I'd love to go coffees to everyone, but otherwise
It's
my
too
whole
much.
week would just be coffees, everyone picking my brain.
No time to make.
Bro,
No time to
that's too
work.
much caffeine for me. So
Yes, for a non-caffeine
yes.
drinker.
Yeah.
All right. So for our fourth question, what's one key skill that you feel builds rapport really quickly?
Ooh, yeah. So love this because
like it.
our team, we do a lot on like human psychology, and if you're, I guess, any job, like I believe everyone is selling, and the word sales, I think, always gets a bit of a yucky feel. I think the transfer of enthusiasm is the way I like to see it. And the way I feel, you can transfer enthusiasm, but it doesn't mean someone trusts you.
So true.
So what I've really dived in the rabbit hole is understanding, rapport and how people trust certain people compared to others. You could have two exact same people, two exact same skill sets, both very good at what they do, but people will connect to one person better than the other, and they're going to pay them rather than the other person. It could be both enthusiastic too. So what I've identified is, yes, I feel it's important that it's the transfer of enthusiasm, but it's also being able to transfer that in a way that the other person feels like they trust you and they like you as well. Everyone wants to do business with people they like.
And get along with. Vibe.
Yeah. So we've unpacked that. I feel we do a little bit of that sort of stuff in our trainings and whatnot. And one of my early mentors, and if anyone likes reading, I don't know, it's just one of the classic books. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it was one of the first ever books I read, and I was just highlighting so many things out of it. And what I realized is that book is full of so much basic stuff, but it is very, very applicable to life and being able to transfer enthusiasm but build rapport and trust quicker, I feel. Probably the two biggest ones I took out of it first is make others feel important. If there's one thing someone loves talking about, what would it be? Themselves. And the key though is you have to be genuinely curious. Sometimes you get to people and you're like, this person's just asking me all these questions. They're not even listening. They don't actually care.
They're doing it because they have to.
You have to be genuinely interested.
It's all about the eye contact.
Yeah, and curious. Be a curious human, and I feel that's a huge one. So
people lack that a lot as well.
I agree. So if you can apply the ability to be curious, and then one thing I've always done since probably 20s when I learned this, and I love it, and I tell a lot of people this, picture a tattoo on someone's head and it says, make me feel important. And anytime you're in a social setting, just look at that tattoo on someone's head, create the eye contact, and be genuinely curious around learning about this person. Because one thing I've definitely learned in life is that everyone has amazing stories and learnings that could add so much value for you. It's just you're not getting the juice out of them because you're not asking the questions and wanting to get to know them. So make me feel important. And then to top that off, again, from the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, super basic, show your teeth, smile, and say people's names. They say in the book, nothing sounds sweeter than the sound of someone's own name.
Oh, sounds a bit romantic.
Yeah. So again, just remember people's names.
Yeah.
It sounds super basic, but I always find when you slip that in to add, you just capture someone straight away. And I mean, how do you feel when someone you've just met or spoke to or haven't seen in a while?
Yes.
They're like, oh, hey, so-and-so. Oh, this is Jamila.
That's very true now that you say that. I had someone do that to me last week. I think I'd only met them once or twice or in passing. And they said my name and I was like, oh, wow. Like they pay attention. Like I actually had a moment where I was like, oh, that was nice. Like I feel respected.
You felt important too.
So yeah, like if you stop and think about it now, if you're kind of like, oh, what's your name again? Like, sorry, like go to introduce, which I actually do and I don't like.
Yeah.
I forget names very, very quickly.
Oh yeah, same. Yeah.
But so I really, really, that I'm going to really try and take that myself and make that something that I implement going forward, remembering names.
100%. And be mindful when someone does it to you, you get this little feeling.
It's like,
inside. It is.
It actually
I kid
is.
you not. It is.
Yeah.
It all came to me when I did my real estate license up in Southport through the REIQ probably a decade ago. This one guy in the class, very good, charismatic energy, smiled. I didn't understand all this stuff back then, but looking back, he knew exactly what he was doing. He kept asking questions. Anyways, the next day I come in, hey, Matt, how are you?
Oh, wow.
He knew my name. And I was like, oh, well, like, yeah, no,
It's a nice
I'm
feeling.
good. Yeah, it was a good feeling. So that moment has always stuck with me. He was always curious in what I did. He learned off me. And still to this day, I'm still connected with that person. So hopefully that little 4 minutes just then gave a bit of impact and hopefully helped on ways I feel can build rapport, because I think that is people skills in general, I think are the key to any form of, success and building your network and all those sorts of things, because at the end of the day, your network is your net worth.
It's almost like attention to detail when communicating and getting to know people as well. Like it's like the tiny little things that make huge impact on,
being an active listener as well, just listening.
Listen.
So, to bow ribbon it all up, make sure it's authentic though. I think more than ever in society now, people sniff out inauthenticity straight away. Yeah.
People are very good at reading that these days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
100%.
We better get on to the next question because we've got 2 left. So, what's your thoughts around investing through a SMSF? Do you help a lot in this area?
SMSF.
Did I
Can
say
you
that
explain
right?
what that is? Do you know? No,
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
joking.
Don't put me in the hot seat.
Self-managed super fund for anyone playing at home. So an SMSF, self-managed super fund, is essentially like your super. Everyone has their super and things like that and goes into a fund. Most people's super funds are just kind of doing its thing, and then they've maybe got someone looking after it or a company, and then it invests their super
I see. Yes.
into everywhere, right? Could be shares and all sorts of things. A self-managed super fund is exactly what it says. It's you've created a fund that you're managing yourself.
Yes.
So you can put that money in wherever you want. You can allocate it into high risk, low risk things, all those sorts of things. So just to give context on what an SMSF is. Of course, not financial advice. I'm no accountant. I'd recommend chatting to your accountant, 100%.
Yes, definitely.
Also a broker's handy. But key thing with SMSF and property is that it is not the same as just buying property in your own name or even any entity. There's so many different little loopholes and things you have to be aware of before buying in an SMSF. SMSF.
It's a tongue twister.
And also there's probably a cap of even starting an SMSF. Like some people start them straight away, but some people don't. I don't know. What I've learned from some of my mentors is you should have at least two to 300K to even warrant the fees to be able to run an SMSF. That again, that's changing for everyone. That's just my personal opinion. So with that, then you can start allocating it into different assets. One thing I've seen people do really well is sometimes looking at higher cash flow with stable growth over the long term. So I know a lot of people buy commercial property in their self-managed super fund. Okay. So that could be one strategy that people might want to look into. Also, residential property is solid, but you got to remember there's certain things around making improvements to the property as well. You have to be careful. Okay. And this is what I just want to create a bit of awareness that it is not just cookie cutter. Set one up, buy property, bang, there you go. Obviously, there's rules even around the returns and the money, like ages you can even touch it. Mm-hmm. So that's all something to think about too. So my biggest tip around self-managed super fund is don't just think it's you go in there and kind of just buy a property like you would. Chat to an accountant first. But the benefits around it, I think, are pretty strong if you're looking at assets like commercial and things like that. So obviously you got to look at the net income as well. So after costs, because there's cost to hold it, there's cost to manage it, there's cost, or the accountant's going to be doing more work to manage all that. So just remember all of those things as well. But I love that there's different asset classes and things like that. And again, to finish on with this question is what I've noticed during the property journey is just like you're walking into a party, right? And then you're walking into a room and you're in this room and it's like you just started out and you see this door in the back of the room and you open that door and you look and you're like, there's a whole nother party in this section of the house. I didn't even realize. You go in there and people are talking differently. They're talking about different things, different chat. And then what happens is you look in the other corner and you're like, oh, there's a door, and you open that door and what do you know? People are talking and playing a whole different game.
Different level of the game.
100%. So if you want to learn more around things like SMSF, and then when that becomes easy, I'm telling you, we could have went down a 15-minute rabbit hole from what I'm learning on entities and structures and things like that. But just know sometimes it's around surrounding yourself with people in different rooms so you can learn safely and then make a decision on yourself and take action. So that's probably my biggest advice there, is that if you want to learn things around, I never even knew around that, you got to get into the right rooms and learn off the right people.
And research as well. And, 100%. There's always so many different platforms these days that you can learn from for free. Yeah. So
there's no excuse, right?
Absolutely no excuse. There's so much to offer.
Yeah, there's plenty of ways to skin a cat as well in the property world. So make sure you do your due diligence. Yes. That's for sure. Yeah.
All right.
What we got? One more, is it?
One more question. I've memorized this one. I can't remember the other ones. But what's been your biggest lesson this year so far?
Biggest lesson? What are we now? We're nearly end of financial year, which is, it's gone quick, eh? So first 6 months, 5, 6, this will get released probably coming up to the halfway point of 2024.
2024. Wow.
Crazy.
Terrifying.
Yeah. Biggest lesson this year. One thing that stood out when I first seen this question was discipline is the strongest form of self-love you could have. Wow. And the reason that's really stuck with me is that I'm understanding more and more that discipline equals freedom. And I don't know, I've changed my whole mindset around discipline.
Yes.
Because you could know it all. You could have all the knowledge. You could have all the time, everything. But if you don't actually have the discipline to do the action, nothing will happen. And why I say, when I heard that quote, it really stuck with me because I used to see discipline as a very hard yang energy mask.
A lot of people are quite negative. Well,
Yeah.
maybe not so much now, but
Don't
prior.
be so hard on
Don't be so hard on
Yeah.
yourself, or have a bit of ebb and flow here and there.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
Yeah.
discipline is where it's at. Like
Yeah.
you have to have discipline and consistency. So
I agree.
I could talk about this for hours.
Oh,
so
it's
I'll let you.
no, it's you,
Yeah.
and I'm glad you see it from that end, because I definitely didn't. And one thing I realized is it's a strong form of self-love. It's the last person you would want to let down is yourself. And what I find is we're living in a world now that I feel as soon as something gets uncomfortable, we think it's not feeling right. It's not for me. And yes, there are times something might not be for you, but have you lent into discomfort first? I think a lot of people these days are afraid to step into discomfort. And one of my early business mentors, he gave a really good point, is that when discomfort comes, tell your mind to lean into it first and see what happens. And what has happened in the last 2 years for me especially is every time discomfort has come up, I've lent into it. I've come out with feelings of more confidence, more self-love, and then also more belief that when a new discomfort comes up, I've been there before and I'm willing to move through it. So if you're someone out there who might be going through something tough now and you're feeling this is really uncomfortable, just know whatever it is you're trying to chase, whatever it is you're trying to succeed with, actually requires you to step into and lean into discomfort and feel that feeling of like, this is tough. Your discipline muscle will get flexed in that time and it will become easier and you'll get more confidence.
You actually become a different person with them. Obviously, that's what you're aiming for as well, but more discipline and consistency. And then you gain more confidence and then you get through it. And then it's another one. You actually come out a completely different person, 100%. Speaking from experience.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm all for listening to self and when things get hard, and you know me, like I was probably on the other scale where I was too disciplined, like too regimented and too hard on yourself. I think what I've realized is there's times in that balance of like, hey, is this just me not wanting to lean into discomfort right now and me not wanting to flex the discipline muscle? Or is this just me like, thinking this isn't the path I want? Like anything in life, if it's something you want, it's going to require some sort of difficult scenario to get there. Yeah. So that's probably my biggest lesson this year is everything that has happened in a positive sense that I deem as somewhat successful in my life the past sort of 6 months has literally come from a moment of like, this is going to be tough and I'm just going to lean into it. And I popped out the other side for the better. So I'm super passionate around this topic at the moment because I'm feeling as though the generations coming after us, not all, definitely not all. I'm not putting a label on anything, but I think that muscle of as soon as it gets tough, it's change pivot.
Let's pivot.
Yeah. But rather than think, hey, is this something I can lean into for growth? So yeah, discipline is the strongest form of self-love you can have because again, the last person you would ever want to let down is yourself. And sometimes people know what they need to do. Think of the person who knows they shouldn't be eating that certain food for their health. They've come away with this certain sickness and the doctor said, like you need to cut that out. And then you tell people what the answer is and a lot of people still don't do it.
Just quickly on that, I saw like a quote or some sort of reel on Instagram speaking about this topic, and they said something along the lines as if your friend kept like arriving to a meeting late or they weren't showing up for you or they couldn't commit to something, it becomes like a bit of a red flag. It's like, they can't really commit. They're not consistent. I don't trust them. But then it reflects on, okay, so if you can see that and identify that in another human being, you need to be that for yourself too.
For yourself.
Because like if you can't show up and you're late to meetings, or you're not being consistent with your training, and you're not being like what you just said, consistent and with eating healthy food and things like that, not holding to your word, then you're being that person that you don't like. So you're letting yourself down the most. So you can sit there and complain about someone else, but if you don't actually have that, you're letting your, does that make sense?
It just wraps on, I guess, the quote, right? Like, you're letting yourself down, and that's kind of your self-love, like self-worth.
And that's kind of why I wanted to mention it, because you need to love yourself and be so, and I think once you're doing that and being committed and consistent and disciplined, you attract the right people. So you're not having that battle of like, oh, they don't show up for themselves. Like
100%. No, it's a
good question.
Yeah, no, it's a really good one. It's a good one to finish on. I believe a lot of success lies on the other side of flexing the discipline muscle, for sure. So, that was solid. That was really good. I really enjoyed that.
How long did that go for?
Geez, you added some value. You were really good. You've been practicing?
Now that I've got my own podcast, it's a bit of a different game, isn't it?
That's really good.
Thanks, Styles.
And just everyone, just get amongst the, if there's any questions or anything that really resonated with you in that episode, or, make sure to leave us a review or flick us a message, whatever. I love getting the feedback, and be on the lookout if you have a question or anything whatsoever. Usually once or twice a month, we'll put it out there. So stay tuned. And if anything in that episode resonated with maybe a friend or anyone, make sure to flick it to them and do a good deed. So, Jamila, it's, what are we now? Friday on the Gold Coast. The sun's finally out.
Let's go.
Let's get amongst it, eh?